Okay, so welcome to the deep dive. As always, we're going to take some sources that you sent in
Uh-huh.
and do a deep dive.
Okay.
Um, Today, we're tackling the very frustrating topic of silent letters in English.
Oh, yes.
I am seeing from your sources things like, the B in comb.
Right.
Like, why is that there
Yeah.
if it's not in Bergbaum?
Mm-hmm.
Also, like the K in night. Like,
Wow.
why is that
Ah,
there?
indeed.
And then also we have words like kernel,
Right.
which sound nothing like they're spelled.
Like Colonel.
Yeah, like how did that happen?
It is confusing.
Yeah, so
Okay.
today we're going to try to get to the bottom of why these silent letters exist,
Okay.
and hopefully give you a trick or two to kind of be able to decipher
Yeah.
them a little bit better. So you're never staring at a word like receipt or island or Wednesday again.
Yeah, let's try to give people a little bit more control over these words, over
Yeah.
these silent letters
Well,
that feel so random.
yeah. So your sources kind of identified four main reasons that we have silent letters in English.
Okay.
And the first one they talk about is kind of this idea of historical leftovers.
Historical leftovers. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
So basically,
Yeah.
some of these silent letters actually used to be pronounced.
Okay.
It's like a word like night.
Yeah.
Your sources mentioned that in Old English, both the K and the G were actually pronounced.
Oh, wow.
And it sounded something like K-nicht.
Okay, so it was like very German sounding.
Yeah, it sounds very German.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like the spelling is kind of like a snapshot
Uh-huh.
of the history of the word,
I see.
and how it used to sound. And now it's evolved.
Okay.
And then another example is the B in comb.
Right.
So that was actually spoken in Middle English,
Wow.
and now it's not. And it's just really interesting to think about how, spelling can be slower to change
Yeah,
than pronunciation.
that's true.
So, over time, our spoken language evolves, but we kind of keep some of those
Yeah.
old spellings.
Interesting.
Okay, so the second reason your sources bring up is this idea of French snobbery.
French snobbery.
So
Sure.
basically,
Like-
sometimes we added silent letters to make words seem more sophisticated.
Okay.
And this is often influenced by French.
Got it.
So a good example is the word debt.
Okay.
So that B was actually added to align it with the Latin debitum,
Oh, okay.
but it was never pronounced in English.
Interesting.
So it was more about
Okay.
I don't know, seeming smart.
Yeah, just wanting it to look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Even if it sounds wrong.
Yeah. And then another example is island.
Okay.
So it gained a silent S because the French Isle had one.
Oh.
But there's no historical reason for it to be in the English word.
Got it.
So it was literally just to make it look fancier.
Okay, so we're just trying to copy the French.
Exactly. Yeah.
A little bit.
So the third reason is kind of a more natural one is that pronunciation shifts over time.
Uh-huh.
And so certain letters just kind of become silent.
Okay.
So one example is the L in talk.
Oh, yeah.
So your sources mentioned that was pronounced. And actually, you can still hear that L pronounced
Mm-hmm.
in some UK dialects today.
Interesting.
But for most of us, we don't even think about pronouncing that L.
Yeah.
Um,
Really.
And then another example is Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay.
So it originally came from Woden's Day, and the D was never silent.
Wow.
But over time, it just kind of naturally got dropped from pronunciation.
So it's just
Yeah.
the way we say it has changed
Totally.
at that time.
Okay, and then the fourth and final reason your sources talk about is what they call spelling does not equal sound chaos.
Chaos.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So basically, sometimes we take spelling conventions from other languages,
Okay.
and even though they don't match how we pronounce the word in English,
Right.
we just keep them.
Interesting.
So a really good example of this is Colonel. Oh, yeah.
So it was borrowed from Italian,
Okay.
where it was spelled Cnosello,
Okay.
but we pronounce it like the French coronel.
Oh, wow.
So we have this Italian spelling
Yeah.
with a French pronunciation,
I see.
and it's just like,
And that's why that L is
it's a mess.
silent.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
And it really is chaos.
It is.
And before we move on to how to actually combat these silent letters, one of your sources had a really great story from a listener.
Oh, cool.
The listener, Silent But Deadly,
Mm-hmm.
said that they pronounced the L in salmon for years,
Oh, wow.
which I feel like a lot of people probably do at some point in their life.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Salmon almost looks like it should be pronounced that way.
Totally.
Yeah.
So if you've ever been tripped up by a silent letter,
Yeah.
you are not alone.
You're in good company.
You really are.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get into some of the worst offenders when it comes to silent letters.
And your sources have some really good categories.
Okay.
The first one they talk about is the bossy E.
The bossy.
So the silent E.
Okay.
This one usually follows a pretty clear rule.
Okay.
It sits at the end of a word,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes the vowel before it say its name.
Okay.
So if you think about bit versus bite,
Right.
that silent E is making that I a long I.
I see.
And it's doing it silently.
It's very powerful.
It's very bossy.
It is bossy.
Okay, and then we have what your sources call the ghost crew.
The ghost crew.
So these are the silent K, G, and W.
Okay.
And these often come from like a Germanic background. So
Okay.
you mentioned earlier maybe some Viking influence.
Right, yeah. Potentially.
So think about words like ni-naw and right.
Mm-hmm.
All of those first letters, K, G, and W,
Right.
would have been pronounced
Oh, wow.
at some point.
Okay.
But now they're just kind of like these silent ghosts hanging out.
So it's like the ghost of pronunciations past?
Exactly. Okay, and then the final category is what your sources call the sneaky ones.
The sneaky ones.
So these are silent B, H, and P.
Okay.
And these can seem really random,
Mm-hmm.
but they often come from Latin or Greek.
Oh,
So like the B in doubt comes from the Latin dubitur.
okay.
But we've dropped that B sound.
Interesting.
And then the H in hour
Huh?
is silent because of its Latin roots.
I see.
And then we have words like psychology,
Right.
which comes straight from Greek.
Oh, okay.
And we've just kind of kept that P.
So there is some logic to it.
Yeah, there is some
Yeah.
logic. It's just like,
It's just hidden.
yeah, exactly.
Very sneaky.
Okay, so your sources also had this really great pro tip, which is to look for patterns.
Oh, okay. Patterns are good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like if you can group words
Yeah.
according to their silent letters,
Uh-huh.
it becomes a little bit less scary.
Got it.
So like they gave the example that words ending in MB,
Okay.
so comb, lamb, dumb,
Yeah.
those will almost always have a silent B. And then if a word starts with EN,
Mm-hmm.
like gnome or sign,
Okay.
that G is going to be silent.
So just kind of learning those little rules
Yeah,
can be helpful.
totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know kind of why they exist.
Uh-huh.
We know some of the common culprits,
Yes.
but now let's get into how do we actually
Right. How do we deal with
how do we deal with these words?
How do we use this information?
Yeah, so your sources had some good tips for guessing
Okay.
if you're not sure if a letter is silent or not.
All right. I'm ready.
So the first tip
Uh-huh.
is to look at the origin of the word.
Okay.
So if it comes from French or Latin,
Yeah.
it's more likely to have silent letters.
Right.
So like words like honest or muscle.
Uh-huh.
But if it comes from like a Germanic language,
Okay.
like house or book,
Yeah.
it's probably going to be spelled
Okay.
a little bit more phonetically.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, tip number 2 is to check the endings of words. So certain suffixes can kind of give away a silent letter.
Got it.
So if word ends in "alk,"
Yeah.
like walk or talk,
Uh-huh.
you can be pretty sure that L is silent.
Okay.
Same with old.
Okay.
So could, should.
Right.
And then another example is chrysomention.
Yeah.
So that E is pronounced in words like action,
Right.
but kitsch,
Okay.
like in which the L is not silent.
Got it.
So you really have to pay attention to those endings.
So they're little clues.
Yeah, there are little clues everywhere.
If you know what to look for.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then another thing your sources point out
Uh-huh.
is that silent letters can affect the sounds of the vowels around them.
Oh.
Because we already talked about the bossy E
Yeah.
and how it can make a vowel long,
Right.
but it can also do other things.
Okay.
So like in the word guest,
Mm-hmm.
that silent E is making the U sound like a short E.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like it's not even the letter itself
Right.
that's being affected.
It's like it has a ripple effect.
It's like a ripple effect, exactly.
Right.
And then your sources had this great listener hack from Phantom Phonetics.
Oh, cool.
And they suggested trying to highlight
Mm-hmm.
the silent letters in a word when you're writing them down.
Oh,
So like writing them in red.
interesting.
And the idea is that your brain will start to just like visually filter them out.
Oh.
And you'll remember
Yeah.
how to pronounce the word.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a good trick.
Okay.
Okay, so even though we've got all these rules and these tips,
Yeah.
it's worth noting that even native English speakers mess up silent letters all the time.
Oh, for sure.
So your sources had some examples of commonly mispronounced words.
Okay.
Like sherbet.
Sherbet.
People often add an extra R.
Mm-hmm.
And then espresso.
Or so.
People want to add an X in there.
Oh, yeah.
And then Arctic.
Arctic.
People drop that C
Uh-huh.
all the time, but it is supposed to be there. So it's like, even if you've been speaking English your whole life,
Yeah,
you're probably still going to mess up a silent letter here and there.
totally.
And then, of course, you also have regional differences.
Right.
So like the word herb,
Mm-hmm.
in the UK, that H is silent,
Oh,
but in the US, it's not.
interesting.
And then you have things like the Boston accent,
Yeah.
where that R in car is silent.
Right.
So it really just kind of depends where you're from.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the final pro tip your sources mentioned
Okay.
is if you are just totally unsure about how to pronounce a word,
Uh-huh.
just try saying it really fast.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of times when we speak quickly,
Yeah.
our mouths just naturally drop those silent letters.
Yeah, it's true.
So like if you say family really fast,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to sound like family.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, okay, the I is silent.
I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good tip.
Okay, so we've covered a lot today,
We have.
but now it is time for the listener challenge.
Okay, I love a challenge.
Me too.
What do we got?
So this week we are going to be silent letter spies.
Ooh, silent letter spies.
I know, it's exciting.
Okay.
Okay, so
Wait.
mission number 1
Right.
is to find one word
Uh-huh.
with a silent letter
Okay.
and try to figure out why it's silent
Okay.
based on everything that we've talked about
Cute
today.
sucking.
So like you could choose the word thumb
Yeah.
and realize, okay, that B is silent because of the M ending.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, mission number 2
All right.
is to trick a friend.
Oh, fun.
I know, right?
I like it.
So ask them to spell a word like February or restaurant
Oh, yeah.
and just see how many silent letters they get wrong.
Okay.
And then the final mission is
Mm.
to embrace the chaos
Yes.
and just post a really ridiculous word with a silent letter,
Oh, okay.
like pterodactyl.
Oh, yeah. Why?
Why-
Why is there a P?
Why is that P there?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
And then you can share a little fact that you learned today.
Okay.
So like you could say, I just learned that subtle has a silent B because of its Latin root subtilis.
Okay.
And you can use the hashtag #themore, you know.
Cool.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want you to remember that those silent letters,
Mm-hmm.
they're not there just to make your life difficult.
You're right.
They often have a reason for being there.
Yeah, they're little pieces of history.
Yeah, exactly. They're like clues to the history of our language.
I like that.
And so the next time you see a word like through
Yeah.
and you're like, oof,
Mm-hmm.
that G is silent,
Yeah,
just remember that now you kind of understand why it's there.
totally.
And hopefully that makes it a little bit less
A
frustrating.
little less mysterious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of language evolving and kind of taking things from other places,
Oh, yeah.
that's actually what our next deep dive is going to be about.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, we're going to talk about why English steals words from other languages.
Oh, cool.
And how you can use those words confidently. So we're going to talk about words like karaoke, schadenfreude, and emoji.
Interesting.
And yeah, like where did these words come from and how did they get into our vocabulary?
That would be cool.
Yeah, so join us next time for that.
Awesome.
All right, thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.